oh, this is not going no way. And no, it's not, because we need systematic change.
What a beautiful way to explore what is happening and describe our country. We might have to amputate the leg, but that's to save the body. That's what's happening right now. That's beautiful, Yvonne. And to that end, I have to ask you this, because the way that we do that, we use our voice. And our voice right now in this world, in this country, is our vote. And everyone talks about voting and how important it is, but I feel like more than ever we understand that it's not just about voting every 4 years for the man in office. It's about your local elections. It's about the mayor. It is about the district attorney, the people who have the power to bring charges against police if police brutality is an issue in your community. If you care about your school district, you can run for the school board. I ask this of you, right? Your parents are from Nigeria. You are Nigerian. You talk about that very lovingly. What does voting mean for you?
I think voting is power. I remember, I became a naturalized citizen back in the 90s, when because I was still a minor. My mom naturalized, and so we were able to do it under her. And just even that power of, like, we are American citizens, and all the access that we have by being citizens. One of those accesses and those access to power being voting. It's a big deal. It's a big deal because not only are we do we have the opportunity to be in this country, but now we can be of the country. We can be of the systems. We can be of the rules. We can be of what it actually affords. But I think, going back to your earlier comment about just the setup of systems, I think we are done a disservice. Either it's schools or whatever it is, and I'm not putting teachers on blast. I think teachers do a phenomenal job, but for some reason we do not, and give them all the raises. I know too many parents who are like, I might, this child of mine, I do love them, but hey, who where can I drop them off? And I do think that there is a disservice done, because again, when we talk about your point, we talk about every 4 years. It's important to vote for the president. We don't realize, like, oh snap, we actually can vote about, like, how much our libraries get. It's like small things like that, but they make a big difference.
When you think of voter suppression in this country, what does it look like for you?
It's the systems. When we talk about voter suppression, we also talk about systematic racism, right? It's
It's
all
all
the
the
systems that
systems
set
that
up,
set up,
and
and
we've
we
normalized.
normalize.
Okay,
Okay,
maybe
maybe
your
your
job will
job
give
will
you a
give you a
half
half
day, or
day, or
maybe
maybe
you'll be
you'll
able
be
to
able to
get this
get this
luxury.
luxury.
It shouldn't
It
be a
shouldn't be a
luxury. It should
luxury.
be
It should
built
be
into
built
the
into the
system. It
system.
should
It
be
should be
built into
built
the
into the
fabric of
fabric of
how we
how we
vote.
vote.
But
But
maybe you'll
maybe
be able
you'll
to
be
get
able to
this
get this
luxury in order
luxury in
to
order to
enable you to
enable
go
you to go
vote. Think about everything
everything
disenfranchised,
disenfranchised,
marginalized
marginalized
black
black
person has
person
to
has
endure
to
in a
endure
day.
in a day.
So in a
So in a
day, you
day,
need to
you
get
need
to
to get
work.
to work.
If something
If
happens
something
to your
happens to your
car,
car,
if something
if
happens
something
to your
happens to your
child care,
child
if
care,
something
if something
happens,
happens,
there's
there's
so
so
many
many
factors
factors
along the
along the
way that
way
can
that can
send you
send you
into a
into a
tailspin
tailspin
as
as
an
an
American.
American.
And then
And
you
then you
add
add
on
on
as a
as a
person of
person of
color.
color.
If
If
you're
you're
just
just
trying to
trying
get
to
to
get to
vote,
vote
and
and
you
you
already
already
have to
have
go
to
through
go through
all of
all
these
of these
hurdles and
hurdles and
hoops
hoops
in your
in your
everyday
everyday
life,
life,
imagine the
imagine the
one
one
day
day
when your
when your
voice
voice
really is
really is
supposed to
supposed
matter
to
the
matter
most
the
in this
most in this
country.
country.
But then
But
you
then you
also
also
see
see
all the
all
times
the
that you've
times that
tried
you
to
tried
have
to
your
have your
voice
voice
matter,
matter,
and then
and
it's
then it's
been
been
shut
shut
down,
down,
repressed,
repressed,
told it
told it
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter.
And then
And
you're
then
kind of
you're kind of
like,
like,
what's the point?
how do we keep hope though? If
If
I'm
I'm
watching
watching
this
this
right
right
now,
now,
I
I
wanna
want to.
I how do we as a people stay hopeful? How do we believe in the promise that
That
these quote unquote forefathers have given us?
Because
Because
have you
have you
met
met
black
black
people?
people?
By the frogs. Like,
Like
hope is
hope is
infused in
infused
our
in our
DNA.
DNA.
Like,
Like
like,
you're like,
like even if we haven't been broken now through, be it through slavery, through capitalism,
give it to me,
through
give it to
through
me.
colonization, through segregation, through, I mean, listen, the history of black people in this country is, at one point we were 3/5 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That was a written law. And look at us now. We are whole. We are black girl magic. We are black boy joy. We are, you know what I'm saying? What I
What I
think
think
about in
about in
terms
terms
of giving
of
us
giving us
hope,
hope,
right?
right?
We're
We're
making a
making a
lot of
lot of
people
people
nervous
nervous
right now,
right now,
Carrie.
Karen.
We're
We're
making a
making
lot
a
of
lot of
people
people
nervous right
nervous
now
right
because
now because
they're
they're
like,
like,
dang,
dang,
we
we
put
put
all
all
these
these
obstacles
obstacles
in
in
their
their
way,
way,
and
and
these
these
jokers
jokers
are
are
resilient.
resilient.
But
But
that should
that
give
should
us
give us
hope. That
hope.
should
That
give
should
us
give us
hope that,
hope that
like,
like
we
we
can't
can't
stop. We
stop.
can
We
stop.
stop.
I mean,
I
I
mean,
went
I
to the
went to the
school of
school of
Diddy.
Diddy.
You know what
You
I'm
know
saying?
what I'm saying?
Hashtag. Ba
Hashtag.
ba
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 ba.
ba ba.
Harlem shaking it
Harlem
right
shaking
now.
it right
Can't
now.
stop.
Can't
We
stop.
can't
We
stop.
can't stop.
And
And
I
I
think
think
that's our
that's our
motto. We
motto. We
can't stop voting and we won't stop voting. We
We
can't stop
can't stop
marching and we
marching and
won't
we
stop
won't stop
marching.
marching.
We can't
We
stop
can't stop
thriving and we
thriving and
won't
we
stop
won't stop
thriving.
thriving.
To
To
that
that
end,
end,
because
because you
led
led
me
me
directly
directly
there,
there,
I've been
I've been
asking
asking
everyone
everyone
who's
who's
appeared
appeared
on
on
this
this
platform,
platform,
what
what
does
does
activism look
activism
like?
look like?
And I
And I
feel like
feel
back
like
in the
back in the
day, we
day,
had an
we had an
idea.
idea.
Yes, it
Yes,
is
it is
marching.
marching.
Yes, it
Yes,
is
it is
protesting. Yes,
protesting.
it
Yes,
is
it is
speaking
speaking
out
out
against things that
things
we
that we
feel are
feel are
not
not
right or
right.
unjust. But
But
talk to
talk
me
to me
about what
about
activism
activism
looks like
looks
for
like.
Yvonne Orji.
Listen, activism.
Activism,
I
I
think the
think the
beauty of
beauty of
activism
activism
is
is
that
that
it
it
has
has
many
many
faces,
faces,
right?
right?
You're
You're
going to
going to
have
have
the
the
people on
people
the
on the
front
front.
lines. Like,
Like,
you know
you
what?
know what?
Martin Luther
Martin Luther
King
King
marched, but
marched,
there
but
were a
there were
lot
a
of
lot of
women who
women
were
who
in
were
the
in the
homes
home,
like,
like,
hey,
hey,
BT
beat
Dubs,
up.
when they
When they
come
come
back,
back,
this is how
how
we
we
support
support
all the
all the
people who are
people
marching on the front lines. And we're going
we're
to
going
be
to be
here
here
doing
doing
what we
what
know
we
to
know
do
to do
best
best
here.
here.
And you know
And you
what?
know what?
Somebody needs to
Somebody needs to
bail them
bail
out
them
of
out of
jail so
jail
that
so
we
that
need,
we
so
need,
now
so
we
now
can
we
be in
can
the
be in the
community,
community,
galvanizing, getting
getting
money
money
or
or
whatever
whatever
it
it
is.
is.
So it's
So
like
it's like
everybody has
everybody
a
has a
position to
position to
play. And
play.
so
And
play
so
your
play your
position like a
position
shortstop,
shortstop,
bruh.
bro.
So
So
whoever
whoever
you
you
are
are
and
and
whatever
whatever
you
you
do,
do,
play your
play your
position.
position.
So activism could look like, you know what? I'm not the one that's built to be on the front line, but you know what? My pockets go deep, so I'm gonna support the people on the front line. You know, I'm a comedian. Black joy is a form of activism.
There's always a call for entertainers or celebrities that have the platform to do something. Why aren't you speaking out? I'm
I'm
not a
not a
believer
believer
in thinking
thinking
that
that
it's
it's
mandatory. Like you said,
said
everyone
everyone
can
can
be an
be an
activist and be
activist and be
activated in
activated.
different ways. But talk to
Talk to
me
me
about the connection. Talk to
talk
me
to me
about the
about the
marginalization in
marginalization in
your
your
world and
world
how
and
you
how you
feel
feel
like
like
it even
even
inspires
inspires
you
you
to
to
say
say
more
more
and use
and
your
use your
platform to do more.
Beneath the
beneath the
surface of
surface of
what
what
we
we
do,
do,
like
like
Nicky Nash
Nat
says,
says,
it's
it's
the
the
who,
who,
right?
right?
The
The
who
who
is
is
the
the
person
person
who's going
who's
to be
going to
like,
be like,
hey,
hey,
let me
let
call
me
this
call
out.
this out.
Either
Either
blind
blind
racism in
racism in
terms of
terms of
overt
overt
racism, in
racism, in
terms
terms
of
of
ways that
ways
we
that
can
we
be
can be
better,
better,
in
in
terms
terms
of
of
ways that
ways
we
that
can
we can
actually be
actually be
more
more
uplifting to
uplifting
the
to the
communities
communities
that
that
we don't even,
you
you
may
may
not
not
even
even realize
realize
that
that
you're
you're
serving.
serving.
Before
Before
I
I
let
let
you
you
go,
go,
talk to
talk
me
to me
about the
about the
urgency,
urgency,
in your
your
opinion,
opinion,
for people to
to
vote,
vote,
our
our
people
people
to
to
get
get
out
out.
and vote this coming election.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
guys,
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 guys.
guys.
If you
If you
think
think
you're
you're
tired
tired
now,
now,
I'm
I'm
telling you
telling you
right
right
now,
now,
we
we can
cannot take this sitting down.
down.
We
We
can't
can't
take
take
this
this
joking.
joking.
I
I
understand
understand
that
that
it may
it may
be
be
hard to
hard to
figure
figure
out
out
who to
who to
vote
vote
for,
for,
but at
but
the
at
end
the
of
end
the
of the
day,
day,
we
we
gotta
gotta
vote
vote
for
for
our
our
families.
families.
We gotta
We gotta
vote for
vote
our
for our
legacy.
legacy.
We
We
gotta
gotta
vote
vote
for
for
continued
continued
progress.
progress.
We
We
have to
have to
vote
vote
for
for
upward
upward
mobility.
mobility.
We
We
have to
have to
vote
vote
for
for
equality in a
equality in a
way that
way that
is
is
long
long
lasting.
lasting.
And if we
If we
succeeded
succeeded
before,
before,
we can do it again. You talk
talk
about the
about the
whole.
whole.
This is
This
the
is the
time.
time. This
This is not
not
the
the
time
time
to
to
give
give
up.
up.
This is not the
Not the
time to
time to
pretend a
pretend
way that
away
we haven't
having
made
made
progress.
progress.
We
We
have.
have.
There's
There's
still
still
much
much
more to be done.
done.
And you know
But
what?
what?
We
We
might have
might
to
have
get
to
to
get
a
to a
point where
point
we
where we
pass the
pass the
baton to
baton
our
to our
children and our children's children,
children,
but we
but we
still
still
have
have
work to
work
do
to do
now for that
that
generation.
generation.
Yvonne Orji, you are everything. You are Molly, but you are not Molly. But I love you so much as Molly on HBO's Insecure. You are an amazing podcaster, Jesus and Jola. Shout out to Lovey. And then we also have movies. Like you, the world. You're a model, a cover model. Also, wait, don't let me forget your hugely successful stand-up comedy special on HBO. Girl, I mean, you're doing it all, and I am so grateful. You're truly the dream, not just the American dream. You're the black girl, brown girl, do it all dream, the immigrant dream, everything. You're a beautiful, beautiful soul. I really, really mean that from the bottom
Thank
of my
you.
heart. Yvonne Orji, ladies and gentlemen, nothing but the best and excellence personified. Thank you so much, my friend.
I love you so much, Mama. Mwah.
Yeah, la la.
So Atlanta has been one of the hotbeds in terms of political unrest and social injustice. We've seen so much happen in that city, and we've also seen so much come from that city, including one of our very own founding fathers of the civil rights movement, and that's Martin Luther King Jr. But right now, we want to welcome in someone who has used his platform to talk about voting, to talk about racial justice, and how he's trying to help Atlanta's very own Russ joins us now on We the People. Russ, I have to tell you what are some of my favorite songs. Recently, you did an interview where you shared your outlook on culture and use
Okay,
so many
Jausa.
people forget about the fact that
Yeah,
you have
boy.
a privilege
Okay.
and that it's necessary for you to give back. Tell everybody
as like
You
it's
see
very obvious I'm
the
white and
what
I'm
you
in
see
black culture and I'm benefiting financially off of it. So
الحدث
I feel like if you're a
الشتاية
white person financially benefiting off of black culture,
شاشة
you have
الحدث.
to put finances back into black culture. It's just that simple.
where
But
are
the
you from?
screenshots with your feelings, it just comes off like fake empathy because it comes off very
You
dismissive and
Arabic?
very oh that sucks for y'all. But anyway, back to what I was
You
saying.
Arabic?
That way always, or is it now because of the time of where we
شفت
are?
الجوك؟
I've always had the feeling. I think now
You Arabic?
it's just obviously elevated to a new level, and there's really, it's to the point now where you can't. First of all, you can't not
You
say
are
anything.
bush?
Second of all, though, I just think saying something isn't enough anymore. I think if you have the ability to put money back into a culture that you're financially benefiting from, have the ability to, you should.
It's interesting that you talk about it in that way because some people do believe that silence is the best way to go because it's hard to talk race, especially if you're white and you're in the black culture. People just feel as if they can't talk about it. They feel awkward. They feel as if they don't have the privilege or the voice or the words. How do you find yourself right now in terms of interacting with people when they want to talk to you about social injustice, police brutality, what's going on in this country right now?
Well, first of all, picking and choosing whether you want to be silent or not, that's a privilege in and of itself. No, I mean, I try to just
يا عمي شو مثل فيك؟
listen to the black people around me and the educated black people I have in my life. So I do my
ايه
best
ايه يوسف تعال شوف البطات
not
وترجع
have
الصوت
all
تعال
the answers
تعال بس شوف.
for everything, especially in a culture that I'm not from. But that's why when we decided to raise the money for Black Lives Matter organizations, when we raised 500,000, we got on the phone with some of the women who started Black Lives Matter. I got on the phone with Tamika Mallory. I was on the phone with Karen Civil and talking with my friends to make sure the money went to like the correct places, and people who really need it. It's just about listening. That's all. It's about listening.
Let's talk about that for a moment because the way I think of activism, for me, it looks very differently. It's not necessarily just protesting on the front lines. I think that's great. But what about being an activist in the way in which you have decided to be one? What inspired you? What did it look like? You said you raised money for Black Lives Matter. What did you do? Walk us through everything that you did and how you find yourself in this moment right now.
So for me, it was 3 years ago. I had like a string of festivals, and I decided that I was going to wear T-shirts with a message on them because I figured, what better, what better time to use a platform than in front of a bunch of people. So one of the T-shirts I wore was, "If you want to change the system, speak up. White silence is pro-racism." The whole thing. And it didn't really it kind of got swept under the rug back then. But when all this stuff started happening again, and it's been happening, the police brutality against innocent black people, I was like, man, I'm not the biggest artist in the world, and I certainly don't have the most white fans in the world, but I got a good amount of people that I can definitely mobilize and turn into some money. And I know they're down for the cause because it's merch, it's a good thing. And I've always been outspoken anyway, And so, how am I going to be in black culture and not be outspoken about racism?
And then I got to ask you this because you grew up in Atlanta, so that gives you a heads up, depending for so many people, because you're in the crux of that beautiful black city where there are so many wonderful black leaders, home of so much great music and things that speak to our culture right now. And we are really, really getting our word out, especially with this platform today, and saying that we must use our voice to vote. Talk to me about what the importance of voting for you in this upcoming election.
Yeah, so full transparency, I had never voted before, ever. And because I was one of those people who was like, my vote doesn't matter, and I don't know, maybe it's because I was younger, maybe it's because I really thought that, or I don't know, but I just think that it's got to, now this is a bit of a privilege to say it's got to a breaking point for me, because obviously it's been past the breaking point for black people, but I think that as a whole, the young people need to get out and vote, because we're the ones that never show up. You know what I mean? We never show up to vote, but we're the future. So it's like, look, we got to go out there and vote, and then whatever happens, happens. But at least we did our part. You got to do
You
your
know,
part.
you're very candid in saying that you just decided to vote. And I think there's a beautiful irony in the fact that you have your fans saying, because of you, I'm voting.
Right.
And there's something beautiful about that. But I want to know why now for you? Why in this moment is it important for you to vote? And what hit your spirit to say, yes, this is the time to do it?
Honestly, because I think that George Floyd really uh, woke up a lot of people who, including myself, who I was vocal and outspoken about racism. I put it in my lyrics. I put it on T-shirts. I would talk about it in interviews. Like, I was vocal about it. But that video, raising money, whether it's, I'm ashamed that it took that for me to be like, I need to raise money and I need to vote. It's a shame. And I don't know, I guess it snapped a bunch of people out of it. And even if you were vocal and whatnot, it's time to actually put your money where your mouth is. It's time to go vote. It's time to just stop talking about it and be about it. And it's been time for that, but like I said, I'm ashamed that it took me this long to actually really, really be about it. But I'm here now.
So, Russ, we all know that this is going to be your first time voting. Tell me what that
Yeah.
experience is going to be like for you in terms of what you're excited about.
I think you know what it's gonna do for me? It's gonna let me know that I'm contributing to something bigger than myself and I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is and I'm being about it because for so long, and I know I'm not alone with this, but you know standing on the outside and just screaming about this and that and this should change and it's like, all right, but did you vote? you know and so I know it's going to feel good to know that I played a small role. And that's the problem. I think the mentality of like my vote doesn't matter needs to be changed to my vote, albeit small, does matter. It's a role I'm playing, and if I play my part and you play your part and he and she plays their part, then we make a difference. But it'll feel. I have a feeling it's gonna it's gonna feel very, very bigger than me. I think when you realize that giving uh, actually feels better than receiving, that's when you start wanting to do your part and contribute. So, voting is an easy way to give. You know.
Yeah. To whom much is given, much is required, and you have been given a huge platform, and we are so grateful for you, Russ. Philanthropist, artist, community activist, first time voter. We appreciate you for doing
Yes.
this, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, la la.
So, cities like Atlanta and Chicago have been at the forefront of the discussions, especially now in this country when we're talking about COVID 19 and systemic racism, as well as police brutality and what we can do in this country. Again, currently, I'd like to welcome in Chicago Cubs right fielder Jason Hayward. I appreciate you. I brought in Atlanta and Chicago because I know you grew up in the metropolitan area of Atlanta, more specifically McDonough. Let's be technical, and and you have been very vocal throughout this entire time in terms of what our country's been experiencing. Let's look at the past month and a half, if you will. What has been the hardest thing for you to deal with?
The hardest thing for me to deal with, Carrie, this last month has just been going from the virus shutting everything down to us being called to action. We've had multiple police brutality situations. We've had people protesting, wanting to get the message out. But I really realized that I need to be a part of the positive message and make sure that doesn't get lost in all the chaos going on for people to actually hear from a reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved.
A reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved, which leads us to more than a vote. It is a beautiful collective of Black athletes and artists. You are a part of that. Talk to me about why that's important for you right now. And this be a part of that collective.
To me personally, it's important to be a part of that because I've somewhat used baseball and my craft as an excuse to not get more involved in voting. But I can't any longer use baseball and work as an excuse not to get educated and not also to show people like at any moment in time, any walk of life, we can make a difference.
So tell me in your words, what does activism look like for you?
In my words, it looks like LeBron James, the biggest athlete right now on the planet, speaking up and breaking the ice for everyone. But I think for the first time, people see and hear from us. So now we have white teammates, we have other people speaking up and realizing, okay, like this is how we go about doing this. And to me, right now, social media, athletes speaking up, entertainers speaking up, like we're trying to do with more than a vote.
You said something I thought was so key because covering sports for so long, I know that it's tough for black players specifically in Major League Baseball to talk about how they feel. Adam Jones did it in a very eloquent way early on, but there are very few that are vocal. You said you all were afraid. Why use that word and why were you afraid?
You was afraid because in 2019 there were 68 of us total, and there are 38 teams. There's 25-man roster on each team. There's a 40-man roster, which is on each team as well. And there aren't many of us. So we're outnumbered in that sense, but not always in a negative way when it comes to our teammates and our clubhouses. But to get to this point, you have to move a certain way. You got to be careful what you say. You can't ruffle feathers. You can't come off in any way. Much like other black entertainers, much like yourself, probably having to live through life every day. But to get to the highest level, you got to button up. You got to be seen and not heard. So baseball is, like I said, it was time for us to try and speak up and make a difference and show it's okay to do so because we can't be quiet any longer.
That is a button up, be quiet, be seen but not heard. That is a an expression that a lot of black folks can relate to in whatever aspect of professionalism that they experience, especially if they don't work for themselves. They just feel that. That is also a socialization that we have as black folks, well, especially like you said, if you want to get to the higher level. And for so long, I felt it bubbling right underneath the surface that so many of us who were in whatever positions we were, who had platforms, were tired of pretending and looking the other way and spending so much time making others comfortable while we were uncomfortable. Do you feel that this is the type of movement that is sustainable, or is it just for a time?
No, it takes everyone joining in on the conversation. And right now, I feel like more than ever, there is little things as possible to distract from bigger issues. And we saw on draft day, we saw our president, Theo Epstein, holding up the sign saying Black Lives Matter and wanting to
Yeah,
include the rest of
yeah.
MLB in that. But now we're having those conversations as well. So I definitely think this is sustainable. And it's not always just going to be the popular thing to do. This is something that people want to get right because they know we care.
Jason, you said you think it's sustainable, that what you're seeing, especially with your colleagues in baseball, that this can be something where you're feeling more comfortable, feeling more safe to share how you feel about social injustice and police brutality. What are you doing right now in this moment with your platform to help change how we look at voting and how to educate the culture and the community about voting?
Well, first, what I'm doing, Carrie, is joining up with More Than a Vote and joining up with other athletes and entertainers to get that message out and use our platform in that sense as a group. And try to create a brand with this to make it something that's not just about the election coming, make sure that it's about people getting educated for years to come and figure out where to vote and how to vote. We've got people in different areas that cover different demographics and influence different areas of people. And as a baseball player, as a black baseball player, I feel like now, like we talked about, is finding the time to show people that you can use your voice in this profession. You don't have to be afraid. And to me, that can help someone, help a kid growing up. He can see me, he can see other guys that were in the video we posted saying, hey, this is what they're standing for. They're speaking up for these things, and it's okay to want to play baseball. It's not lame. It's not something I have to be as afraid of as I was before. So I feel like that's my role in this. I have a younger brother as well. He's 24. He also plays baseball. So I've got to lead by example. I can't just always, come up with a good answer that sounds good on TV when I get asked a question on, what do we need to do to make changes. I'm joining up here to make sure that I take action and get educated myself. For one, so many people, I feel like in Atlanta, they're on the move. Well, when you want to try to make a vote and try and cast your vote, you have to do it by mail. You have to sign up for the absentee ballot. Then you have to get another ballot in return. They have to send it back to you. Well, for me personally, they didn't send that back until it was too late, right? We didn't get it in the mail to the address that's an Atlanta address at my parents' house. We didn't get that in the mail until other friends and family that are still in Georgia right now. I just hear about them being held in lines too long and trying to get off work. And we know how it is for any family, but let alone a black family in a city or in the suburbs trying to take care of their family and trying to provide for them. You try to get off work, and then you're like, wait a minute. You start looking at the clock. It's like, oh, this is not going to happen today, right? And so I saw, Mayor Keisha Bottoms, reach out via social media to people and say, hey, I'm going to address these issues right now. I need y'all to stay in line to cast your votes. Keep hanging in there. So to me in Georgia, that's what that looks like.
Well, it's interesting that you even bring that up because there have been all these images specifically from Georgia, because that's such a battleground, where you see people, especially when it came to the primaries, doing whatever it takes. And this is real life voter suppression that you're talking about. It's been happening for decades. It's not fake. What you're saying, these examples of sending you your ballot too late after the fact or shutting down the polls at 6 o'clock while people still are in line, that's a real life issue. There needs to be some type of change. And I think that what we're doing right now is fair. But the idea of voter suppression, do you think that that is well known, especially with folks, within the generation, your generation?
I think it's known in our communities, right? I don't think it's spoke on enough. I don't think there's been enough light drawn to it. Bring it to light. Let people hear about it. Let people learn about what that looks like, and get more people to say, okay, look, like this is going to happen. We have to expect this, and we can no longer make the excuse. We can't say they didn't warn us.
Jason, everybody knows, or it feels as if everyone knows, that the time is now. America's paying attention to us. We have their eyes, we have their ears. If you look toward the future, what are you most excited about in terms of seeing a change?
I'm excited about how fast the word is traveling. The word is being spread right now. The biggest athletes, the biggest icons, biggest entertainers are doing their part. But I'm also seeing people out there on the streets doing their part. When so many things got lost, could have very easily got in the commotion when it came to protests, and you saw rioting, you saw looting. People still stood their ground, and people still went out there and said, look, we're doing this for the right reasons. We're going to come together. We're going to use drones. We're going to use social medias. I feel like this is a new wave of getting things done the right way and just spreading the message.
You're right about that. And you're right. People are spreading the word unapologetically. We out here. We doubling down. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Right.
Yeah, la la.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to welcome a friend, a brother, family member, if you will, former colleague, NBA great, sports analyst, philanthropist. He does it all. And he's here to give us his time and his platform to talk about something that is so important, and that is voting. Everybody, welcome Jalen Rose to We the People. Talk to me about how important it is for the people who know you and love you and look up to you. Why is it so important that you use your platform to talk about voting?
Initially, we have to get past the stigma of the mental systemic racism that comes with the presidential race, governors, mayors, senators, judges. We've been conditioned to believe that our vote does not matter. So usually when we looked up at all of those races and people that were running, not only did they not look like us, we didn't believe they were there to represent our best interest. So therefore, as a collective, we didn't mobilize until Barack Obama, and we felt a sense of hope that finally our country is going to do something that we felt would never happen in our lifetime. And I remember being at the inauguration in 2008. I made sure I was there. And we voted. In 2016, we didn't vote, Carrie. We didn't vote. And so many people try to make this political. This is not political. Me telling somebody to vote is like telling somebody to pay taxes. So that's one, getting over the stigma of nobody is going to represent our best interest. And then number two, the reality is that the person that gets the most votes doesn't necessarily win the presidency. That's uncomfortable right there, because that's actually what took place in 2016. The Electoral College chose the president. And if you put all of their pictures up, I'm pretty sure they look a lot more like each other than they look like you and I. How about that? And then the third thing especially in urban environments, oh man, they create barriers for us, Carrie. It's like you got to jump over the fence, you got to run past the dog, you got to jump on the hood of the car. The lines is 5 hours long. You get up to the pole and they don't work. Elderly people working in the city, while they got the young people who understand technology working in the suburbs. Like these are all systematic things that try to discourage us from voting. And then finally, we don't have a day off to vote. We need to work. So we don't get a
Mhm.
day off. It's going to be a full
Mhm.
day, and I got to work to pay my bills. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mail in vote. And you know what you want people to realize that that counts too. So your vote will be counted if you're able to mail it in. So those are a few things that I hope that we can do and mobilize. And shout to LeBron and his team. Shout to you and everybody involved. We will make a difference.
Well, let's talk about more than a vote. There is a Black collective of athletes, of artists coming together and saying voter suppression is a real deal, especially in the Black community. When you just talked about, I got to work, so I can't go vote. And then when we do get in the booth, just in case we don't have to work, do we know who we're voting for? Not only do we have to vote, we got to be educated. And it's not always even about the man who's in office or the woman who's in office for president. It's about your local elections. It's about the people who are your DAs, your state DAs, like the people who actually make change in your community, who will change police brutality, who will make sure that your community is taken care of, who will defund police and hope that they can help you in stopping police brutality. So, talk to me about why you decided to be a part of More Than a Vote and what it actually means.
Well, it means a lot to be involved with such an impressive collective, as you mentioned. And I've said this multiple times, and I know it can be uncomfortable when I say it, but a lot of times we have to get to the root of the issue before we find a solution. And the quote was, I wish America loved black people as much as it loves black
Mm-hmm.
culture. And
Mm-hmm.
this collective, by the way, represents in a lot of ways what's encouraging, but also sometimes disappointing about our role as black people in America. Because we were brought here as labor and to entertain. And we use those vehicles to get paid and move to the
Mm-hmm.
suburbs and be the idols of white kids. And so now that we have this collective, I would say sports and entertainment represent the most powerful group of black men in the United States. I'm talking about money, power, celebrity, the ability to mobilize, community involvement,
Yes.
their leadership, their intellect. And so to have all of us pull it in the same direction at the same time for anything that we're passionate about is going to be a difference maker, but it's definitely going to be a difference maker in the 2020 vote because we're going to make sure we inform everybody and failure is not an option.
Jalen, what does voter suppression look like to you?
A perfect example took place recently, Carrie, in Kentucky. It was 6 p.m. at night, and so many people were standing in line enthusiastic to vote. And you know what they did? Locked the doors. And you know what the people did? They continued to bang on the doors, continued to bang on the windows. They continued to let it be known they were not going to leave the premises until they got a chance to vote. And you know what ended up happening? They opened those doors and allowed those people to vote. So do not be discouraged. These barriers show you that it matters, and we're here to help you break through them. The same thing with our platforms and voices, Carrie, because you know what's going to happen. At some point, Breonna Taylor is not going to be trending anymore. People are not going to be protesting anymore. But it's still up to us to keep making sure that our voices get heard,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one way to do so.
Right, and that is a form of being activated, being an activist. It doesn't have to be protesting. It doesn't have to look like what you think traditionally activism looks like. It's voting. It's that simple.
We now have to understand like this is a critical mass moment for this movement to continue to hold up as much steam for as long as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what this collection is going to hopefully allow for that situation to happen.
Jalen, in today's age of technology, it should be easier to vote.
No doubt. It's like we call these devices smartphones, but yet I can't vote from it. All of the things that we do in our lives are in our phone. All of these barriers are things that people will need to overcome in order to create a level of enthusiasm to vote. And again, this is not political. It's your right to do so. And there's so many times where you feel like somebody may have gotten done unjustly in your community. Pay attention to who the judges are, who's running for Senate, mayor, governor. Pay attention who's running for president. And let's make sure in 2020 we make a difference.
Why is more than a vote so important and invaluable in our community right now?
Well, because right now, I think we have an opportunity to let our voices be heard louder than ever. Anytime you see the mobilization of white kids holding Black Lives Matter signs, that means there's a breakthrough. Now, what happens with that breakthrough is the next step. You're going to look down in your email, Carrie. You're going to see all of these companies telling you how they're going to work on their diversity, how they're looking themselves in the mirror. They need to make change, just like in sports, right? Look on the field and on the court, all those black players. Further you get up, it's like altitude or a ladder. It gets thinner and thinner. And so a lot of people talk about the system being broken. I hate to remind people that it's not broken, it was built this way. And one of our ways to help change the system is to vote. So that's why more than a vote is so very important, so we can make sure everybody participates and gives themselves an opportunity to let their voice be heard.
I think it's interesting because you talked about black men being very powerful in the U.S. if they're athletes and entertainers, because for so long those have been the only avenues traditionally to create wealth. The NBA season comes back. What are your feelings on the season coming back in the midst of everything that is happening?
I think you'll see players challenging the establishment more. You're going to see them saying, okay, if you have all of these marketing and promotional deals, how many of them are with minorities? How many people are you employing in NBA? What about certain teams? Who do you have as a minority owner? Or what about the candidates that you have for positions of power? NBA players have proven as blacks that they are now movers and shakers in the game. They're now the dog, not the tail. So if they decide not to play, some of the biggest social changes and conversations have taken place in sports that weren't during the game. Colin Kaepernick was before the game. The Ali Summit was a press conference. So they could mobilize if they chose to. But when and if you do play, challenge the league. Black Lives Matter on the jerseys. Continue to make sure that every time people are watching the game, they're also seeing the movement happen.
Jalen, I appreciate you because you are always entertaining and informative at once. I really, truly am looking forward to the NBA season. Thank you for working with More Than a Vote because your voice, your platform, all of it is needed, my friend. Be safe, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I love and appreciate you. One call away always.
Thank you. Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Every conversation that we had today, I hope was helpful for you. I am so grateful to everyone who came on with me to talk about what's going on in our culture and how we need to change. Huge shout out to Jalen Rose, Bun B, Jason Hayward, Yvonne Orgy, and Russ. Their words were inspiring, but also important and invaluable. I hope your phone is full with all the information that we've been able to place in front of you. Again, you need to check out these resources because they are so important because we want you to vote. That is your voice. It is important. We, the people, want you to vote. So go to morethanavote.org, fairfight.com, and whenweallvote.org. Again, thank you so much for joining us and paying attention because this message, again, is invaluable. I'm Carrie Champion for We the People.